Welcome back to Anon Stories, where you find the chilling stories which force you to think about them. Get ready and let's dive in. This is a chilling story. My neighbor's obsession with old dolls revealed a chilling, forgotten secret. My neighbor, Mrs. Calder, had lived next door longer than anyone could remember. Long enough that her name appeared on old utility records in the town hall, written in a careful hand that hadn't been used in decades. Long enough that children grew up, moved away, and warned their own kids never to cut through her yard. Everyone knew about the dolls. Her front windows were always uncovered, even at night, and the shelves inside were packed floor to ceiling with antique porcelain dolls. Hundreds of them. They stared outward with cracked faces, glassy eyes catching the streetlight. Some were missing eyelashes. Some had hair yellowed with age, tangled like it had been pulled out in clumps. Whenever I walked past, I felt counted. Mrs. Calder never smiled. She would stand in her doorway sometimes, watching the dolls as if she were waiting for one of them to speak. I told myself it was harmless. Just an old woman clinging to strange comforts. I was wrong. It started when Mrs. Calder died. No family came forward. No funeral. The house was sealed, and the town planned to auction the contents. That's when curiosity got the better of me. I volunteered to help catalog items for the estate, partly out of morbid fascination, partly because I needed the money. The moment I stepped inside, the air felt wrong. Heavy. Like breathing in a room that had been closed for too long, or sealed on purpose. The dolls were everywhere. Not just shelves. Chairs, beds, even the kitchen table. Each was positioned carefully, posed as if frozen mid-movement. A tea set sat in front of 3 child-sized dolls, cups raised but never touching lips. I noticed something odd while writing inventory tags. Each doll had a name. Not handwritten labels, etched, delicately, into the porcelain at the back of the neck. Emily. Thomas. Ruth. Samuel. At first, I thought nothing of it. Antique collectors name things all the time. Then I saw the dates. Tiny numbers scratched beneath the names. Years. Decades old. And always the same note in the margin of Mrs. Calder's notebooks. Last seen. That night, I couldn't sleep. I searched the town's digital archives, more out of curiosity than fear. Missing persons. Cold cases. Children. The first name made my stomach drop. Emily Hart. Age 7. Disappeared 1962. The next. Thomas Reed. Age 5. Disappeared 1954. Every single name matched. Every doll was named after a missing child from our town. Or nearby villages. Children who had vanished without witnesses. Without bodies. Without answers. My hands shook as I scrolled. There were over 100 cases. The dolls weren't themed. They were a record. The next day, we found the basement. Behind a locked door we hadn't noticed before, hidden behind a wardrobe too heavy for one person to move. The smell hit us first, dust, rot, and something metallic. Shelves lined the walls. Not dolls this time. Clothes. Children's shoes, neatly arranged by size. Hair ribbons. Report cards sealed in plastic. Locks of hair tied with string. And in the center of the room, a work table. On it lay porcelain heads in various stages of completion. Blank. Eyeless. Waiting. A journal sat open. Mrs. Calder's handwriting was shaky but clear. They don't leave when they die. They stay where they were last seen. The dolls help them remember. If I give them faces, they stop screaming. We called the police. Of course we did. They took the evidence. The dolls. The journals. The case made the news. Historic child abduction ring suspected. Grisly breakthrough in decades-old cold cases. But something never sat right with me. Because some of the dolls in the front window weren't old. One wore sneakers from the early 2000s. Another had a hoodie with a brand that didn't exist 20 years ago. I checked the updated missing persons list. A child disappeared 3 years ago. And last night, when I walked past Mrs. Calder's house, one of the front window dolls was gone. The shelf was empty. And in the glass, reflected faintly behind me, I saw a small hand pressed against the window from the inside. Watching. The police sealed Mrs. Calder's house after the investigation. Boards over the windows. Locks on every door. They said everything inside had been catalogued, removed, and stored as evidence. They were wrong. I know because 3 nights later, I heard the sound. Porcelain doesn't creak like wood. It clicks. A soft, delicate tap, like fingernails brushing glass. I live across the street. I hadn't slept since the case broke, and when I looked out my window at 2:17 a.m. The boards were gone from one window. Just one. A dim light glowed inside. And the dolls were back. Not all of them. Just a few, arranged neatly in the front window like before. Their glass eyes caught the streetlight again, reflecting tiny pinpricks of white. I told myself it was stress. Hallucinations. Guilt for digging too deep. Then I noticed the new one. It sat in the center. Its clothes were familiar. My breath stopped. I owned that jacket. I donated it last year after my nephew outgrew it. Same tear near the sleeve. Same faded zipper. I stumbled back from the window. That's when my phone buzzed. A notification from a local news alert. Breaking, police confirm another child missing. Last seen 2 blocks from Calder residence. The name hadn't been released yet. But the doll already had one. I went back the next morning with the police. The boards were intact again. The house was dark. Silent. Inside, nothing had changed. Except one shelf. There was an empty space, freshly dusted, perfectly measured, like it had been waiting. On the wall behind it, carved shallow into the wood, were words I hadn't seen before. Someone must remember them. That night, I dreamed of porcelain hands gripping mine. Of voices whispering dates instead of names. Of eyes that didn't blink because they never needed sleep. I woke up with mud under my fingernails. And a splinter in my palm. From a board. I don't live there anymore. I moved cities. Changed my number. I don't tell people where I'm from. But sometimes, in antique shops or thrift stores, I'll see a doll that feels wrong. Too detailed. Too careful. Recently, I found one online. No seller name. No description. Just a photo. The doll looked older than the others. Its porcelain face was cracked, its glass eyes clouded like they'd seen too much. Etched into the back of its neck was a name. Mine. Below it, already carved. Last seen, pending. And I finally understood the truth Mrs. Calder was trying to hide. The dolls weren't trophies. They weren't evidence. They weren't even confessions. They were containers. And once the shelf makes room for you, the neighborhood never forgets. Because the dolls are still watching. And they're still waiting. Like and subscribe for more.